broadcasting live from It's the Bug. This is Pop Culture Reference, your one-stop reference for all things pop culture. I'm one of your hosts, Seamus Connolly.
And I am Garrett Strada.
And today we're finally getting back to it after a long bout of various toddler sicknesses that I have been dealing with overlapping each other.
Well, yeah, you were sick, then I was sick, then you were sick, and you just started the new job, and I was out of town. And it's been rough, but we're back, and I think we're back for I think we said this last week, but we're back for actual regulars this time.
Oh, goodness God. Well, I would hope so, and we're finally getting to the original Spider-Man PS4. I guess Spider-Man that we are all playing on PS5s at this point, but it's all for the new release of Spider-Man 2 that you have already have your hands on. I am super jealous about, but we've got lots to talk about the original one.
But before we get into it, we do have some news coming up, starting off with the passing of film legend Richard Roundtree, who passed away at age 81 this week. Best known, of course, for his role as Shaft in the Shaft franchise. But he also was in a variety of other projects that I think that he's kind of undersung in, including the Rian Johnson, Joseph Gordon-Levitt neo-noir Brick, which he is the principal in, and really good.
I am definitely less versed in Shaft than I should be, because I've only ever seen the 2000 Shaft, which he is also in, but he's also in Seven and George of the Jungle, which are two very opposite movies.
George of the Jungle, yeah.
I, as a child loving George of the Jungle, I would have never known that he was like the legend that he is.
He also has a solid run on the first season of Heroes, so...
What? How do we keep coming back to Heroes, Garrett? This is insane.
Because it's good and you should watch it, Seamus.
I guess it's good and I should watch it.
Except you should only watch season 1 of Heroes and then stop.
That is, no joke, at my new job, I got the exact same piece of advice from the guy that sits next to me, and I really am taking that to heart.
And did he say, you'll want to keep going? You'll be like, ooh, that sounds interesting.
Almost word for word. It's crazy. I was like, you should listen to my podcast. This is wild.
We're gonna come back to Richard Roundtree during our pop culture reference segment. But also, having passed away, this is shocking news, I think, at age 54. Matthew Perry has passed away, obviously best known for his role of Chandler Bing on the monolithic sitcom Friends, and he's also one of the best parts of that show, I would say.
Oh, I would say certainly the best part. I think he was always my favorite character.
Joey's pretty good.
Joey's pretty funny. I don't know, bouncing off of Chandler Bing, they were the dynamic duo of the show, and Matthew Perry was certainly the funniest person on that show, I think, just
I would agree.
Overall.
And the poor guy, like, obviously he had a lot of difficulties with the addiction and other things, but also I feel like his career just never took off the way it should have, because he was in a lot of not very good movies that he was always the best part of, including a movie that a lot of people like that I don't like, The Whole Nine Yards, where he's Hitman Bruce Willis's neighbor.
Is that what that movie's about?
That's what that
I've never seen it.
It's supposed, people like it, I don't, but people like it. He's really good in it, though. You cannot deny that he's really good. Ving Rhames is maybe in that movie?
You're making a case for this movie that you do not like. I don't know.
You should watch it. If people like it, just because I don't like it doesn't mean that other people don't. And so that's worth watching. I hear Fools Rush In is good, which is his rom-com with Salma Hayek that my dad likes and is always telling me to watch, and I never do.
I will always feel like, to me, Matthew Perry is always iconic video game antagonist Benny from Fallout New Vegas.
Is that true?
He shoots you in the face. He is the guy that says, truth is, it was always rigged from the start, and puts a bullet in your head right at the beginning of that game. And he is one of the most iconic characters of the entire franchise. I think he was always like an avid gamer, and he like wanted to be in that game, and his voice talents were impeccable in that gym.
Well, to other undersung Matthew Perry projects that I will plug are his great stint on The West Wing. He is so good.
What? Dude, again, it always comes back to West Wing and Heroes, both of those.
Well, actually, I'll plug a third one that I haven't watched. I understand that he is great on Studio 60 on the Sunset Strip, which is a short-lived Aaron Sorkin TV show that he and I think Brad Whitford were the leads on. And then I really liked, this must have been 10 years ago, there was a one-season sitcom called Go On, where he was a sportscaster, like radio personality, whose wife died and started going to group therapy.
Oh my god.
And it was, the whole sitcom was centered around his zany group of therapy friends, and Laura Benanti was the group leader, but it was like Tyler James Williams and Bill Cobbs and John Cho and Brett Gelman.
Oh.
And like it had a really good cast, and Perry was very funny, as he usually is on it, and I'm sad that that one never got picked up, but I'm sure you can find it on Hulu or Peacock or something.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that I think is going to get put back in the rounds now. This was just such a sudden thing. I know that he was kind of maybe on the rebound a little more in his more recent life, but I guess, I don't know. This was just last night as of the day of recording, pretty much. So it is all still up in the air.
His book came out recently, too,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, it came out like this year even, maybe?
I think so. It's like being the first Beatle to die. It's like,
that's exactly. They just did that Friends reunion thing, and like you said, his book, he's like he shed a lot of light on all of the things that people don't know about his life. It is a damn shame. Moving on to our regular strike updates. Since the last episode that we recorded, there was a lot of dissonance between the talks going on here, but SAG-AFTRA and the AMPTP have come back to the table and have wrapped another round of talks. And they're waiting the AMPTP's response to the offers that have come out as of late. I think at least it's some kind of movement. We were kind of stonewalled for a little bit there in our little hiatus that we had, but we're right back into it, and I know that there are things that are not going to be budged on that I think that are going to prolong a lot of these talks, and they're going to continue a lot of the delays and shifts around in the release schedules that we've been seeing at the very least.
Clearly, studios do not think that the strike is going anywhere anytime soon, because Paramount has shuffled around a bunch of their films, including delaying Mission Impossible 8 a full year and allegedly dropping the Dead Reckoning Part 2 subtitle. So, retroactively, 7 will just be Dead Reckoning, which I guess is fine, but also that it is very clearly a Part 1 of 2 parts. But then again, so is the second highest grossing movie of all time, a Part 2 of 2 parts that have 2 different titles, so... I guess, I don't know. I was so... Maybe it's just because I need more Mission Impossible stuff to be coming out rapidly these days, because it is such a thrill. Honestly, I hate to say I'm kind of psyched about the idea of getting another Mission Impossible title, because Mission Impossible titles are rad.
They really are, though. You know what? I guess you have me there. I haven't thought about that. I mean, I feel like it has to tie into the idea of Dead Reckoning, at the very least.
Dead Reckoned.
Deader Reckoning, Die Hard style. Even Deader Reckoning.
Then also Disney delayed a bunch of stuff, including the live-action Snow White, which we got our first look at and looks as terrible as you would think that the first look at the live-action Snow White would look. Pixar's what was supposed to be Pixar's next film, Elio, has been delayed, although Inside Out 2 is not, so Inside Out 2 is now the next film coming out next year, and the Jonathan Majors-helmed sports drama magazine Dreams has been removed from their release slate entirely, which I suspect they were happy to have an excuse about.
I was gonna say, they were like, oh no, delays, they're still working on that one a little bit.
Loki season 2 is supposed to be, good and out.
I'm hearing good things. I'm hearing
hearing less good things as the season goes, which is what I would have expected. So
that's a shame.
Is it?
I mean, kinda. I don't know. I care so little about that stuff. It feels nice to care.
We'll be coming back for Loki Doki in a few weeks, maybe sometime.
Are we? Do I have to rapidly catch up real quick? I guess that was always on the table.
But our last piece of news is, of course, because we haven't had an episode with that one in so long, a Netflix nuisance.
I don't know how. I don't remember how long it goes on, but
it's pretty short. It's one of our shorter ones.
Oh gosh, but the nuisances will be forever, no matter how short our jingle is, because the basic tier of Netflix is being hiked to $11.99 a month, with the premium tier going up to $22.99 a month. Garrett, didn't we just do this? Am I crazy?
I like looked back and I was like, didn't we? I literally looked back in our episodes. And I was like, no, that was just another price hike that we looked at. So
it just feels like it's never ending. If it's not Netflix, it's another, and if it's all going in a circle constantly.
And I'm once again, it's like the Disney Plus model of like, are you guys sure this is the right time? You want to be hiking your price? I mean, I know the highly anticipated End of the Crown is coming up, as is the Scott Pilgrim anime, so I'm sure that they think they got some gas in the chamber.
And I mean, it's the holiday season. No Yule log is better than the Netflix Yule log, Garrett. You know that.
I go to YouTube, man.
YouTube?
I'm a man of the people, Seamus.
I guess you can get a little Christmas jazzier with it on YouTube. I feel like...
Oh, no, I do. I just take... no sound. No,
no sound?
I want the crackling
fire sound. Okay.
No music, sorry.
I guess I need a little something. I need a little something in the background if I'm doing that.
Well, I can play my own Christmas... This is a weird...
We're getting into the Christmas of it all, man. It's almost time.
I can play my own Christmas music on my speaker and then just have the Yule log going, so that way I don't have to combat, like, if I'm like, okay, I want some Bing, or if I want a little, like, poppier, if I want some Christmas wrapping in there.
Yeah, you need a little more crackle, but you want the Silent Night to go a little subtler on it. You need to hear the pops of the fire sometime.
Exactly. I want my own choice. That's basically what I'm saying.
And Netflix is making it too expensive, so I guess maybe YouTube is Netflix has nothing anymore, I guess, besides The Crown, maybe, and the Scott Pilgrim anime, like you were saying.
So yeah, we'll see. I mean, that last season of Stranger Things is gonna come out someday.
Dude, I don't even remember. I think maybe season 3 was the last one I watched all the way, or even watched it all. I mean,
liked the last season. Okay. Before we start talking about Christmas and Stranger Things again, why don't we go ahead and bop over into our main segment?
Let's thwip into it.
That's brilliant. For today's main segment, we're going to be talking about the PlayStation 4 exclusive, except it's not anymore because both of us played it on the PlayStation 5, Spider-Man. Marvel's Spider-Man. This was... I mean, the game of a generation, I think, of consoles. It was a console seller for sure. I don't know if I've ever wanted a video game console more than I wanted the $200 PS4 Black Friday 2018 Spider-Man bundle that you literally could not get your hands on, period.
I couldn't imagine trying to... I kept a cool head about Spider-Man when it first came out, and I knew a lot of other people who flipped out and got it first, and then I was like, yeah, I'll watch you play some Spider-Man, and it I was such a fool, Garrett. It was so... Like you're saying, it's a defining game, I feel like. It's very late in the PS4 lifespan and kind of bridged that gap of, like pushing everything that a PS4 could do at that point.
It's the Last of Us of its generation.
It is.
Sure.
It's exactly that. In that it also got a remaster really fast and a sequel that is just sweeping everyone off their feet.
Well, outside of the cultural impact, the movement of Spider-Man PS4, I think that it's a pretty solid game overall. I do have some issues with it, actually, which I have the added dimension of being able to compare it to 2 now, which I didn't think I was going to have when we were going to record this episode 2 weeks ago before the
the end of the world.
I think that ultimately, and this is a good and a bad thing, it's almost more of a toy than a game. Because it's like, I just want to pick it up and play with Spider-Man for a while.
I mean, you're not wrong, and I feel like that's not even necessarily a bad thing to say about a game like this. It's movement. Going from place to place is 70% of the fun of the game, you know? Collectibles. Genuinely a pleasure to go around New York and to find all the little tiny collectibles and listen to the little recording about each little thing that grows the world that they kind of plop you into. I appreciate that they don't do a whole origin thing, even in like flashbacks or anything really. They're just like, you're adult Spider-Man. Don't worry about any of the regular origin Spider-Man stuff. Just Spider-Man. And that's what you do. And it's such a fun time to just Spider-Man.
It is, I mean, we'll get into spoilers a little bit. There are some, like, weird things that come out of that, I think. Some world-building decisions that we can get into later. But ultimately, yeah, I agree that it's very considerate of them to not make me sit through any more rehash for the millionth time of a Spider-Man origin story and who Peter Parker is and who, like, you know who Mary Jane is, you know who Harry Osborn is, and in a lot of ways, the game uses that to its advantage, which, again, we will get into in spoilers. But, I mean, the story, ultimately, it's a good story, it's a well-told story. I would say it's a more competently told story than most superhero movies that are made today.
For sure.
But at the same time, I feel like ultimately it's all in service of, like you said, just whipping around New York and beating up bad guys with your Arkham combat that you have.
Yeah.
Because it really is, and it wears its influences on its sleeve. It really is just Arkham but Spider-Man, and the great innovation is how solid the swinging is. Although I think that there comes a point where you get good enough at the swinging about 2/3 of the way through the game that you're like, I wish there were more depth to this mechanic. And I am pleased to say that I think, I think Miles Morales adds some welcome additions to that, which we aren't covering this episode, but is worth bringing up, and I think also Spider-Man 2 more fully addresses those problems, which I am happy to report.
Well, I am very glad to hear that. I do agree with you that at a certain point I wanted like a swinging skill tree, even like something to swing towards, as it were, to try to unlock a little bit of something or master a little bit more of a complicated mechanic. But I'm glad to know that they really grounded everything in just like perfecting the swinging in the first one, and they're adding the extras in the new stuff. I think I'm happy to hear that.
Where do you fall on the face situation?
Oh,
Seamus,
yes.
the face
now
controversy.
Now that I have started Miles Morales and I get to really see the difference, it's a little weird. I will say, going from regular Spider-Man to seeing the remastered, re-edited faces, it looks like they made Miles look way older and they made Peter look way younger.
I
so
agree.
when they're talking to each other in their own voices and their relationship, it feels really bizarre. I just started Miles Morales, so maybe I just need a little bit more time to get sunk into it and just get used to it a little more, but it's weird, man. I don't know.
I think Miles looks weird in the first game, so I think that his new face...
I will say he looks better.
He looks better.
He looks better. Peter looks worse. I haven't really seen any other reoccurring characters yet, but
It's mostly those two.
I know there's like a weird thing about Mary Jane in the new one.
In the new one, she looks
design.
different. But she didn't get remastered for the remaster. She's just the same.
Oh, interesting.
The remaster, she looks just as much like Kirsten Dunst as she does in the original.
It's a little strange. It's like a recasting situation where it's like you just kind of have to. It's fine, but it's also like this is the strangest version of that. They could have at least made it look a little closer to what everybody's used to in the game that we're covering now.
Well, it's interesting because I think that the only version I have played more than a few hours of is the remaster. That's the one that that's the first game I played when I got my PS5 and had the time of my life. I think that being used to the new face, I do think it feels more natural. Like, he definitely has PS4 face in the original game.
Yeah, he does.
And
honestly, PS4 hair. That was a big... his hair was whack.
It's the eyebrows and the eyes that
Yeah.
wig me out the most about the old model, which is the biggest difference, I think, with the new one. Obviously, I kind of resent... I feel like a big part of the reason they did it was because he looks a lot more like Tom Holland.
Tom Holland, yeah, exactly. I don't know how I feel about that necessarily.
But at the same time, I do think he looks good. Like, I do think that it would have been hard to update the PS4 face for next gen and have him look good, because he kind of looks like a Muppet. Like,
Yeah, he does. I can live with that. I think I'll get used to it, is really my attitude about it. It's still kind of weird, but it's fine ultimately, and it's not going to really ruin my experience. He's in a mask mostly anyway. It's about the suits. I don't care really about the Peter Parker segments.
It is all about the suits, except when you unlock the Raimi suit, and that's the only suit you play with for the rest of the game.
Dude, Wait, did I already tell you that I did that, or are you telling me that you did that?
No,
because I very much did that.
No, that's what I do, man.
Okay,
sure.
good. Because there's a lot of good unlockable, collectible stuff with great Easter eggs in the suit menu, but you're there for the Raimi suit. I feel like that's where my mind went immediately.
You and I were not playing this game at this point. That a bunch of gamers had tantrums online about how the Raimi suit wasn't in the game and like threatened the developers' lives.
Was it not?
People are insane. It was like on Spider-Man Day 2019 or something that they released the Raimi suit.
But people need to chill out, Jesus.
Yeah. Well, I think it was the fact that the Amazing Spider-Man suit and like 15 of the Tom Holland suits were in the game. Which, to be fair, I think most of the Tom Holland suits work better in the game than they do in the movies, which I think is really interesting.
Well, they're all CG and weird anyway in the movies, so it definitely fits in the game universe.
I do like playing with the homemade suit. I think that's a good suit.
Are suits spoilers? Are we getting into suits?
I guess that's an interesting question. I think, people know what Spider-Man looks like, would be my argument.
It's not like any of these suits are like I guess a couple of them, a lot of them are original, but a lot of them are from comics, from movies.
So we can save the rest of them for spoiler talk.
Okay.
Which I think we're about to get into, because we're going to talk about characters and story and game mechanics and suits. So let's go ahead and do it.
Yeah, this is the official spoiler warning for Spider-Man. I don't know where to start.
I think people need to calm down about the non-Spider-Man missions and grow up. It's fine. It's fine. You could do a Mary. Do I think there are too many Mary Jane stealth missions? Yes. Do I think that they're game ruining like so many people do? No. They make you more invested in the side characters, which you need to do in a game whose story is kind of, as paint by numbers as this is. And the payoff of then playing as Miles through portions of this game, I think are really important.
I can see where you're coming from with that, but me personally, I think those stealth missions are a menace! They're a criminal, Garrett! Oh, God! Oh, I mean, they weren't that bad. I thought they maybe dragged on a little bit, but after a time, I realized you could pretty much just walk nonstop for most of them and get them done in 25 seconds flat. So I really did not care that much.
If they were punishingly hard, it would be one thing.
But they're so simple. You just turn on a radio and just walk around the other side of a box. Like you were saying, there are some pretty... I would say the Miles ones feel more important, and maybe that's just because I don't love MJ in this game as a character. Like she just seems a little... I don't know. I don't love MJ in this game.
I think that her characterization in these games, my issues with them are less issues with the game as much as they are that they are extensions of what Mary Jane has become in the comics in the last 20 years, which is, in a misguided bout of feminist sensibility, Marvel has decided that it is not valid to be a model or an actress if you're a woman, so MJ has to be... They've turned MJ into Lois Lane.
That's what I'm saying. They exactly turned her into Lois Lane.
And I think that, at least in the game more than she does often in the comics, she has maintained some of the, like, sweetness of the old Mary Jane, I think, which I appreciate. And maybe that's, again, because so much of the performance seems to be channeling Kirsten Dunst.
I feel like the situations that they're putting her in and the attitude that she had, like, in most of the game here, they are broken up, have since been broken up, and they have, like, a weird relationship, but it seems to be a lot of, like, I need my own journalistic independence Spider-Man, even though my ass is walking into the military base that is about to turn into a bloodbath if you don't save me pretty much every time I do this stuff.
It's crazy how much of her stuff is, like, backdoor DLC, too, which is annoying. Like, yeah, it's like, oh, the MJ mission to set up the DLC.
Oh, man, when I started the DLC in the first episode, there's an MJ stealth mission, and I was like, there's no way that this is what is happening here. But I think that's, like, maybe one of the only one of those that happens. But I thought it was funny that they were just throwing more in there.
I agree that there are too many of them. It's not that I don't agree that there are too many of them. It is frustrating when you're like, I would just never be here if I were you, MJ. Why are you in Tombstone's garage?
That's what I'm saying.
Send Spider-Man. And I know that, well, MJ is competent and can take care of herself, which is great when she is thrust into a situation where she has to take care of herself. More like she is at the first MJ stealth mission at the art gallery. I think that is a great setup for an MJ mission. But
sure,
when you make me frustrated with the character for being dumb, that's when I'm like, yeah, this combined with the not great gameplay. I understand why people find it frustrating, and I think the other reason that Miles' missions are similar but more interesting is because he is in more immediate danger in those missions usually, or at least because it's clearly like, they're like, he's prepping to be Spider-Man. They're putting him in situations that Spider-Man would be,
yeah.
He's fighting Rhino. He's
got his tech
civilians.
gadgets that he's using to get through the battlefield and stuff.
And MJ, they obviously don't have that kind of trajectory in mind, so it just feels a little dissonant. I think Miles' personality in this is fine. I don't think he's as engaging of a character as his Spider-Verse counterpart, which is, to be fair, maybe my favorite on-screen version of Spider-Man, ? So that's, it's not like I'm expecting it to be as good as that movie. But I like how patient they are, and that he is not Spider-Man at all until the very end of this game, and then it's cool that the DLC is kind of the ramp into the Miles Morales standalone game.
Yeah, he's very giddy and awestruck and, very excited, obviously. It's the high school Spider-Man that we weren't given with adult Peter Parker in a way that I very much appreciate it. I am looking forward to digging more into the Miles Morales to get a little bit more of that independently Spider-Man personality that I'm sure is going to get more developed, and I'm sure you have infinite knowledge of Mr. Spider-Man 2 over here, but I thought that his character was just fine in this.
Yeah, like, it is confidently done and explored better in other games, probably, is what I would say. As a side character who's a backdoor setup for a spin-off and subsequent sequel, they're doing a fine job with him. While we're on Peter's friends, it is insane to me how much chemistry he has with Black Cat, considering the fact that they're both people in masks that are CGI.
Yeah, I like the Black Cat stuff a lot. I almost wonder what that kind of game would be like if there was less of an emphasis on him being with MJ and she really kind of does some messed up stuff in the City That Never Sleeps
horrible.
DLC. It's like
She's
really messed up.
Person.
And she's still like jumping around in tight latex and with the claws and stuff and doing her fun things, but that was pretty dark.
But she's also probably the best part of the DLC. So
yeah, I I guess we're mixing in the city that never sleeps up with everything else. Probably, I
don't
guess.
You think? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I enjoyed them a lot, but I feel like I don't really care that much about Silver Sable. I don't care much at all about Hammerhead until he turns into a Terminator gorilla guy, and then I'm like,
that's my least favorite part of it.
Why? I think it's crazy. I love it. It's somehow almost the most over the top villain thing in this entire game, even though there's a lot of over the top villain stuff.
That's my problem. Is I'm like, it doesn't fit the tone of the rest of he and Silver Sable don't fit the tone of the rest of this world, which is like semi-grounded but still comic booky, and then he's just like crazy. He's straight up science fiction.
He gets resurrected with like a taser to the chest, and they fit his head onto a robot body. I feel like Black Cat she rides that line a little bit. You know, she's still like doing her own thwip around town, but is also then being like, I am gonna lie to Spider-Man about being a father so that I can dupe him and run off and stuff. And then her dad is there.
Adult subplot for a game that is aimed at 14-year-olds, I think.
Yeah, dude, it really is. And I was thinking a lot about, like, there's a whole thing kind of like that in the Guardians of the Galaxy video game, where it's like, you know, there are things that make sense along the way as to why.
But Star-Lord behaving in such a manner is very in line with his characterization in the films and the comics. And, like, not that Peter Parker doesn't do things like that in the comics, but Peter Parker Spider-Man is a kid's superhero through and through. Like, he is for 8-year-olds. And not that I have a problem with it, I think it's just a little bit more surprising in this kind of game.
It is surprising, and again, it goes back to, like, we're plopped into adult Spider-Man, post-college grad, working adult relationship-having Spider-Man, and they only kind of sprinkle in a little bit of the details about him and Black Cat's past, where she kind of gave up crime for a while, maybe, and they were, like, direct partners for a long time while him and MJ were broken up, and that's like a whole different game. That's like a Black Cat standalone game a la Miles Morales, where you still thwip, but with, like, ropes or whatever. It's an interesting idea. It doesn't take me out of that much. I feel like it's less him being promiscuous and more just like, yeah, I guess maybe sometimes Peter Parker has these adult sexual relationships with other people who can kind of be on his level a little bit more with the idea of Spider-Man versus his whole, he has to fight against Spider-Man when he wants to be a normal guy, famously.
There are a lot of things in this game that feel lifted from other media. And not that Black Cat always isn't like this, but I feel like especially in this one, she is so Catwoman-y in that she's in love with Spider-Man and not in love with Peter Parker.
Very true.
MJ, the thesis of the DLC, I think, MJ is the only partner that Peter has that allows him to be both Peter Parker and Spider-Man, because she accepts, even though there are some, obviously there's conflict in their relationship because of it, ultimately she accepts his duty to both those identities, and Black Cat is clearly like, who cares about being Peter Parker? Just be Spider-Man, that's the better version of you.
Oh my goodness gracious, I am very curious to know if she is making a return visit in 2, and I cannot ask you that question. I do like her stuff a lot, and I'm looking forward to the idea of her coming back and kind of maybe playing a more direct role in the main game. I feel like a lot of her, I mean, I liked her stakeout locations. That's a fun little mini game, but I maybe would have liked her to intersect a little more with the main story. So I guess I've got to wait for a sequel.
Well, why don't we get into some of the other characters that we have going on? I think the Aunt May in this game's really strong. I think she's a good, like, Definitely. She toes the line between spunky go-getter Aunt May that we see in things like Amazing Spider-Man and, of course, the Tom Hollands, and, like, old lady Aunt May that we get, the traditional version of Aunt May, like you see with Rosemary Harris and the Raimis.
Yeah, I thought she was very lovely. I like Feast, and I like her own sense of responsibility that we see, like you're saying, old lady Aunt May usually is more of just like a take this money, Peter Parker. I love you, boy. God.
And there is that in this too.
And of course, but then she's also like, turning around, being responsible, being a part of such a really sad internal conflict for Spider-Man as well, which, I mean, usually it's either she's alive or she is dead. And this is like, Spider-Man has to choose that for her, basically, which is so devastating when they do that to you in the end.
And it's a really strong moment that is earned. And again, like most of the twists, and I say twists slightly in this game, it's not that it's so much a surprise, is that the emotional stakes are executed well enough that I don't mind that I saw it coming.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, same thing with something like our boy Dr. Otto out there, That's like a tale as old as time, but I thought that his relationship with Peter and the way that they really make that such a strong point of the early game is their work together. I thought his deterioration was extra tragic, and I thought it was incredibly well done. And
I love that, just like the twist with Aunt May is not that Aunt May is dying, the like little note on that is, of course she knows Peter's Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
And with Otto, the twist is not, because they tell you from the very first shot of him in the game that he's gonna be Dr. Octopus in this game. Again, I mentioned in non-spoilers, they use your pre-knowledge of Spider-Man well in this game, I think. So the twist is not, oh, Doc Ock is bad, but the knife twist of, but he does know that Peter is Spider-Man and tried to kill him anyway, is difficult. Like, that's a good beat that's told well in the third act.
They sprinkle a little bit of that into when the Sinister Six, like the big team-up moment, which is awesome, by the way. I mean, the raft breakout, all that stuff.
That's
very
probably
cool.
the high point of the game, I'd say.
It's so kick-ass. But, knowing he is Spider-Man, he says, like, don't get in our way, last chance. He almost gives him the out. I mean, does he know that there's no way that Spider-Man is going to stay out of their way and that it's more of like a show of force? Who knows, whatever. But like, there is still like a decent amount of struggle, I feel like, in that him having that information as Otto versus like as Dr. Octopus. It's very interesting line they toe until there is that, like you said, quote unquote reveal.
And I think Lee, similarly, like Lee is transparently a bad guy from the moment you meet him. But they give him more depth than you think that they're going to. That they have taken these archetypical characters and not tried to hide their role in the story from you, but instead endeavored to give extra dimension to them in a way that they are not normally portrayed, which is, again, part of the reason that when you return to MJ, that her characterization is a little frustrating, because their version of giving her extra dimension is just lifting her Lois Laniness from the comics. Which, I mean, MJ needs to have agency in this game, obviously. Mm-hmm. But she can have agency and be a model, is my argument.
Yeah, if she just needs to have some kind of liaison relationship with Spider-Man as she's sneaking around, she could just be at places where crimes are happening. They do that with... She could have just been visiting the art gallery as an actress doing a thing for a promo, whatever you want to say.
But that's not, I guess, if you're trying to make this a franchise games, that is just not sustainable.
Yeah, that's true.
And also, I guess, Spider-Man, that is a big part of that character, is the reporting side of Spider-Man, the photographer, the Daily Bugle, Jonah, all of that. She's really the link back to all of that in this, other than the podcast, the J. Jonah Jameson podcast, which is hysterical.
Just the Facts, my favorite podcast.
We should get him on the show. We should get him.
Jared! Love him and Jared. I want Jared to be a main character on the mic in the next one.
It's not that I don't understand the utility of it, but I just do think that it's extra frustrating seeing the dimension given to these other characters. Even somebody like Norman Osborn, who they start him out as villain Norman Osborn like you think he would be, and then make him slightly sympathetic, and then they're like, but actually he's a villain. No, for real though. Like,
he really is though. I mean, we've got our little Venom tease at the very end with him and Harry in the tank and all that, which I'm sure you would love to talk to me about, but
I don't know what you're talking about.
Oh, but who knows? That wasn't a symbiote in there. That was you fill in the blanks. I don't know. I remember weird debates when the game first came out. I was like, what is that? And it's like, guys, come on. Like, let's be real here. Please.
I do enjoy the post-credits scene. Like, I do think that's funny. It really does embrace the language of comic book movies, of superhero movies, despite being a video game.
Yeah, definitely. It knows what we want. They do give us like 3 post-credit scenes ultimately,
because the end of the game proper is him and MJ get back together in their Stan Lee
the Stan Lee pizza place.
And then there's the post-credit scene with Miles telling Peter that he has powers. There's the post-credit scene with Harry and the symbiote in the tank. And then is there another... I didn't fully complete the game on our replay for this episode, so remind me if there is another that I'm forgetting.
I think that's all of them, and then they do, at the end of the DLC, there's a post-credits of... that launches, into the Miles stuff. So besides I think it caps it at the symbiote for, like, the main game.
Yeah, the DLC, it's crazy how... So I played, like, probably replayed. I've played it multiple times, because I've platinum both the Spider-Man and Miles Morales. I've only played the DLC once, so I was like, I'm gonna bop back to the DLC. And holy crap, I had forgotten how much the difficulty is cranked on the DLC compared to, like, earlier stuff in the game.
Oh, yeah, because it's all post-game. It's assuming that you've level 50 maxed out all your stuff and you're incredibly competent with basically every gadget in your arsenal.
So yeah, I was like, whoa, this is a lot.
It's a lot at once. Shields, jetpacks, dudes coming up from the ground.
Guys.
All right, do you want to talk the jetpack guys? The big fat mob guys with the machine guns are unnecessary. Thank you.
With the screwball challenge with those guys, dude, I don't think I have ever raged harder at a game than I raged at that screwball challenge.
Oh my goodness, God. Well, here's a different question. I don't think I asked you yet. What kind of play style were you, like, spamming gadgets, or were you all Batman punching people?
I don't use a ton of the gadgets, but they are. I mean, there's no way to do it without using the gadgets a little bit, really. But I am much more into the combat stuff. Like, get them in the air, take them out one at a time. The swing kick.
Oh, yeah, I love the swing kick.
I love the swing kick. As much swing kicking as possible. I will say this. I want to get back. I don't want to completely derail, but in talking about stealth, like when you're doing things like the Kingpin, the Fist construction sites.
Oh, yeah, sure, the bases.
The stealth seems like such an afterthought in this game that they have, like, the on-rails stealth missions where it's just like, okay, like, go around the room and web guys up, and, like, the most depth to that is you can distract somebody by thwipping onto a distraction object. I think that the basic building blocks of the stealth are really strong and fun, and I wish that they actually let you do it, because you can clear out, like, 10 guys in the construction sites, and then that's it. Like,
and then they
make you
it's the
fight.
Bug, and then it's wave 2, and then it's everybody knows exactly where you are. Yeah, I thought that they could have expanded on that just a bit more, give you a little bit more to do than just either web strike or perch strike or whatever the two things are called. Give a little variety in there, And again, we're like, remember Batman Arkham? There's so many stealth things in that game.
Which I'm sure is why the stealth is not put any more emphasis
magnified.
Here.
Yeah.
Oh, another combat thing. Webbing the guys all the way up and then holding triangle to swing them around and knock them into the other guys. That's also one of my favorites in the combat.
That's a great move. And I mean, see, I'm actually a little surprised that's how you were doing it, because I remember your God of War stuff was very much like runics and throwing your axe and all that stuff.
Yeah, God of War, I hang back. And yeah, just it's all throwing the axe. I'm not in there at all.
Yeah, because that's surprising. We kind of flip flopped, because I'm using one gadget per small minion. I'm just like letting it fly. I spam all 4 spider bots at the same time, and then I use my big spider bot at the same time, and I just let them shred all the guys.
It's fun to do that. The
Oh,
Web
man.
Blossom, which is the first one, that's the one I usually stick with because I just
That's what
think
you like 360, like spin around and web everything around you.
it's really satisfying.
I used the Tom Holland bot like most of the game. I feel like that's another thing. I wanted a little more. I don't know. There's so much variety in the suit powers, but I feel like they
Yeah.
were not all very useful. I used
Kind
a
of
lot of
like
them.
The suits. There's technically a lot of them, but I only want to play with like 4 of them.
That's true. Oh man, yeah, that's very true. I guess is that. I mean, can you tell me that about the sequel? Do they add more suit powers that are worth trying and keeping?
I can't get into it. The mechanics are so
Oh,
like
no.
they have made the mechanics so much. They're not different, but they're deeper and they're more thought out.
Huh.
And it's a lot of the things that we are bringing up. They clearly thought, okay, how do we address this without just like backtracking and like not having it in the game, but like making it a more satisfying version of that experience. And so
God,
that's
great.
as much as I'll tell you right now.
Okay. Oh, I'm gonna be so curious, but I gotta stay strong.
In a week, you'll have my copy after I'm finished playing it and you're finished playing Miles Morales. So.
Very true. That is, I forgot you got it physically, so that really takes a lot of my obstacles out of the equation, doesn't it?
I know being sick for a week will clear out your video game money, but...
Very true. Oh, man. And I'm abandoning so many video games I swore to God I would finish before the Metal Gear Collection came out.
But I'm trying to think, there are definitely other things to talk about in this game.
I mean, I love, in the same vein of, like, let's plop you down right into Spider-Man's life, all of the villains having prior relationships with Spider-Man in a way that make it feel lived in, He's talking about how Electro is dumb. He's quipping about all the weird hallucination poison stuff with Scorpion, it seems like even if I don't know a ton about all of these different characters, I know, mostly what the movie versions of them have showed me. I'm still all the way on board and aware of things, even when it's like, oh, someone's wearing a Mysterio costume and making a jab at Spider-Man that he, had a run-in with Mysterio at some point. I'm like, this is kind of the best.
I love the Electro Vulture fight where
hell yeah.
you have to figure out 2 different fighting styles and 2 different strategies and how to combine them. I kind of wish there were more of that in this game, to be honest, because I think that's such an interesting moment. I love it when games just present you, like, it's almost like a puzzle. It's like it presents you this situation. You have to really apply what you have learned over the rest of the game. Eventually, if you're doing bad enough, it'll be like, remember to do this to fight Ultra.
Right.
I like that it just lets you kind of be like, oh, I gotta figure this out now, just like Spider-Man would.
No, and I thought that fight was phenomenal. Such fun, swinging around, dodging 2 different types of ranged attacks at once and kind of somehow lining it all up. I thought it was fantastic. And then there's the Rhino Scorpion fight, which is insanely frustrating because you have to.
I hate that. Yeah,
that one. It was like the same idea, but they did it bad that time for no reason at all.
So I guess when I say I wish there were more of it, I wish there were more executed well.
Yes, exactly. Because there's a couple, but oh man, that was a bummer, especially on like the hardcore mode for the New Game Plus or whatever.
Yeah.
That was a brutal one.
I will say during the DLC and during New Game Plus, I did use Spider-Bot a little bit more because I was just like, I'm tired of dying to these jetpack guys. I gotta,
Dude, they were ridiculous.
Another mission I want to shout out is not because it's like a great mission or whatever, but I really do love the Spider-Man-iness of, hey, you got evicted and now you have to go find the garbage truck that has all your stuff in it.
Yeah, he's like calling the garbage dispo guy a bunch, and he's Eddie, I want to say, maybe Eddie.
I think Eddie.
Yeah, I was like, I want this garbage truck guy to show back up later and be like, hey, Spider-Man, I found some of your spider stuff.
Yeah, it's a great little moment. I think that this game again could benefit from more interactions with regular New Yorkers, and that's a moment where it shines when you do, like, you have that woman that you save towards the beginning of the game, and you tell her to go to Feast, and then, like, you see her volunteering at, not just at Feast, but volunteering at Feast over the course of the game, and I think that's a great 1-2 setup payoff. And I know that, I mean, it's a technical marvel. The size of Manhattan, how much there is to do, the fact that, like, it does feel populated is nice, but at the same time, I'm like, I would have sacrificed this map being a little bit smaller if I could go into places or interact with more people.
Yeah, have a few more. There's that one type of street crime where they're, like, robbing a convenience store, and they do a little diorama camera angle, like, locked camera angle, where you get to, like, go 5 feet inside of a bodega or whatever. Yeah. And then it's like, why can't he go into regular places, maybe, really, instead of this? But
they could make the post-platinum feel a little bit more lived in, I think, other than... Because there's, like, 4 types of crimes, and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that's very true. It does start to... When you're trying to wrap up some crimes, and it's just crimes all in a row, it's definitely hits the brakes hard, but that is also because I just couldn't help myself. I was like, I'm going to pace myself with collectibles and stuff, so I just, like, I'm not doing all the same stuff in a row, and then I just got all the collectibles in a row because they were very fun.
That's a small nitpick I have, is I wish that, like, when you find the vial of sand that has the Sandman in it, I wish that you could leave the menu and still hear Pete talk about it. I hate when you have to sit, like, when you pick up a tape recorder in a game, and you have to sit and hold the tape recorder to keep listening to it. It's like that, where I'm like, okay, let me continue, like, let me hit square to go back to gameplay, but continue listening, instead of circle to just go back to gameplay, or something.
If you're having a conversation with Miles or MJ on the phone, or you're having an inner monologue thing, don't you dare get too close to a main objective mission, or else you are done for. You will never hear that again.
No, never. I mean, at least the Jonah Jameson stuff, you can go back and you can listen to they have an archive in the menu.
The archive? I didn't even actually know that. That's actually very useful. But there were a couple. I mean, granted, there are also some things in place where, you'll do something, you'll get interrupted, and then he'll be like, "So, Miles, you were telling me about a thing a second ago," which I was like, wow, that's actually really nice. But then other times it's just like dust in the wind. There's no way to get something back.
It's kind of like we talked about this on the God of War episode. Sometimes you get out of the boat, and that's just it. Never mind, you don't get to hear it anymore. And then sometimes you get back in the boat, and Mimir's like, "Oh yeah, I was talking about this."
Yeah,
and so I agree that could be better. The new one, I have run into that problem as well. Not to talk too much about the new one, of like, I'm on the phone with somebody, and I want to keep being on the phone with them, but I go buy a collectible. Most of the time when you go buy a collectible, it's just you get the collectible, and that's great, and you don't have to worry about it interrupting your phone call. But then sometimes, you get another call, and you're like, "Hey, I see you found that collectible." I'm like, "No, I wanted to hear the other thing, though."
Dude, we're too frantic. We're picking up collectibles, listening to calls. They really do want you to perch on a wall and listen to things for a while.
Often I will, if I'm still on the phone and I get to, like, sometimes the main objective's too close, the next objective's too close for the length of the call, and so then you're just, like, swinging around a city block over and over and over again.
Oh, man. Yeah, that is, I don't know. We're just too good at swinging around. We're getting places too fast, Garrett.
I never use the fast travel in this game for obvious reasons.
There were very, very few times I used the fast travel. There was maybe once or twice where I was like, it's all literally end to end all the way across Manhattan. I'm just going to quickly get there real quick. And, you did a little trophy pop when you use the subway a couple times. There's some fun little animations there that I do enjoy.
Well, in the remaster, you don't get those because there's no loading screens.
Oh, that's the curse. The curse of solid-state drives. You can't read the things on the loading screen.
I also think it's interesting how much the DLC introduces, like, new mechanics that are just for the DLC, namely Spider-Bot.
Yo, there's one mission in the main game with Spider-Bot, and I was like, yeah, there's literally one where you're walking. I think it's a research mission. It's, like, not even a main mission thing.
Oh, yeah.
And then it's like, I saw that, I was like, oh, I can't wait to do these every once in a while in this game, and then never again. I was so sad. But then they bring it back in the DLC a lot more, so at the very least, I was happy about that.
I like the science labs. I think they're pretty good. I think
Totally.
it's a good way to remind you that like Harry is in this universe, and to have Peter reflect on his relationship with Harry, even though obviously Harry isn't in the game at all.
No, I thought that was super awesome. The way that he's leaving the little recordings and they seem, pretty straight on for a while, but then you start hearing little tiny things in his voice about his trip or whatever and all that, and then it really does come all the way together when you find out the messed up truth about what is actually going on with him.
I'm excited for you to learn more about everything as you play Miles and eventually play Spider-Man 2. We'll come back and do both of those games on the show at some point.
For sure.
Miles is essential, other than the story, is mostly pretty much the same as this game.
That's what I've been noticing. I mean, obviously, I didn't play the remaster of 4, so
That's
the upgrade to PS5 is definitely... there's a lot of little goodies in there for me to figure out, but it feels very DLC adjacent.
But it's like, I don't know. I don't think it's totally fair to like complete, like, a lot of people are like, it's just DLC. And I'm like, kind of, but I don't know. I think it tells enough of its own story. If it were like just another Peter game, I'd be like, yeah, it's DLC. But it tells enough of its own story, and you explore enough of... It's almost entirely new characters, which I appreciate. I think there's enough going on. There's some differences in gameplay that, again, this isn't the... You don't have to do the stupid line up the lines test in the lab. I like the Electro one fine. Like the one where you're routing the...
Yeah,
circuit.
the little... That little, +5, -4, get the right voltage thing. Yeah, the lining the lines up, though, whatever.
It's
that's not even really fun. Yeah.
Any final thoughts on Spider-Dude PS4?
I enjoyed the hell out of it. I think that is maybe the last greatest PS4 game of them all. I am incredibly looking forward to the new one, if I can avoid any more spoilers than I've already gotten. I can't believe we barely mentioned Screwball in earnest in this. Like, she is a menace. She's the real menace of New York City, and I kind of love her. And then I was like, I started loving her, and then I was like, oh, wait a minute, I hate her more than anything. Wait a minute. And she was so much of the DLC. I thought it was hilarious and cringy, and
it's like, because they know she's annoying, which is the great part. They know she's going to piss you off that much.
And that's why it's so funny when you're struggling to do her stupid gadget challenges. You're like, why would you give me these two gadgets together, Screwball? And then you gotta get the photo bomb! It's so ridiculous. I love it and hate it.
Yeah, I mean...
The cringe is part of her appeal to me.
It's done tongue-in-cheek enough that I think it works for
me.
We appreciate the humor in it, Seamus.
I appreciate the humor, but it also feels like an unironically, like a boomer wrote that. It was like, no, this is right. This is totally correct. And I guess maybe, again, that's why it's so fun to listen to.
Yeah, but should we go on thwipping, as you would say, over to our pop culture reference?
Let's do it. For today's pop culture reference, we're going to be talking about the cultural impact of Shaft. Shaft was a film released in 1971, which, in conjunction with the Melvin Van Peebles film Sweet Sweetback's Badass Song, was credited with creating the blaxploitation genre. The National Film Registry acknowledges Shaft as, quote, the first feature film by a black director to be financed by major Hollywood studio.
While the writers of Shaft, Ernest Tidyman and John D.F. Black, were white, the interpretation of the character and story by director Gordon Parks and actor Richard Roundtree helped root the film in the black zeitgeist of the era. Parks was an active civil rights artist whose acclaimed work as a photojournalist from the 40s through the 70s gave him a unique perspective on the American racial, cultural, and economic climates.
Roundtree, on the other hand, is credited by cultural experts as being a turning point in the way that black men were portrayed in major films, and was the first black action hero to expand across audience demographics. Richard Roundtree played the original John Shaft in every installment of the franchise, including the short-lived television series, with Samuel L. Jackson taking on the role of John Shaft II in 2000, and Jesse T. Usher being the most recent to take the name as John Shaft III in 2019.
you and I have some competing Shaft experience, Seamus, as I have seen only the original, and I believe you have only seen the Sam Jackson one.
Yes, that is exactly right. I feel like I am missing out on a huge part of film history, American film history, and I know Shaft is on Criterion as the important film that it is, and I think I would like to get my hands on that and do a little Shaft double feature with you so we can kind of get caught up on the classics.
Yes, because famously, Shaft 2, Shaft's Big Score, is a supplement on the Shaft Criterion release. It's not also on the Criterion Collection. It's just on the disc.
Yeah, does that mean that it's... I guess it technically means it's not in the Criterion Collection then at that point, right? It doesn't have a number.
Correct.
Very sad, but honestly, as much preservation of this franchise as possible, I think is important because it's so prolific. It's so important in what it did to blaxploitation and black cinema in general. I think we should get educated and do a little mini marathon.
I mean, the first Shaft rips pretty hard. It is good.
And I mean, we just both found out that Jesse T. Usher was Shaft the Third, so I think maybe we need to round it out there.
For sure. But why don't we go ahead and wrap up this episode with today's Saving of the Rec Center.
Let's save it.
Save the Rec Center! Now it's time to Save the Rec Center, where we bring you our weekly recommendations.
God.
Seamus, are you okay?
Yes, I'm good. I'm sorry, that silence was so deafening, I almost lost my mind there for a second.
Well, what do you have for us today? I guess it should have been saving the feast shelter today, but...
You help someone, you help everyone. You help the rec center.
But what do you got, Seamus? What are you recommending?
I finally, in my feverish week of sickness, I got into a couple Halloween movies, and I revisited a childhood favorite of mine to see if it still holds up, and I swear to God to you, Garrett, Joel Schumacher's The Lost Boys is incredible. I don't know if you've ever had the pleasure, but it is truly the most unhinged vampire film of the 80s, starring Kiefer Sutherland, Corey Haim, Corey Feldman. Of course, our boy Alex Winter, Bill S. Preston Esquire, is up in that piece. It is completely deranged, absolutely hilarious, and it is so very little about actual vampire stuff, I feel like, for some reason, that it is one of the best vampire movies of my list here, I think.
How did I not know that was a Schumacher? That's insane.
You know what? I just discovered that when rewatching it the other day, but let me tell you, it makes a lot of sense. When you know that and you watch it, it makes a whole lot of sense, my friend.
I've never seen it. I would like to see it. It seems like... I can't believe that wasn't on my Halloween list this year, although I've been not good this year about scary stuff. I don't know if it's the fact that the world is scary right now, or I'm just not feeling it. Like... Even, like, I was watching Scream, I've been watching Scream in, like, 25-minute chunks over the last few nights, and I'm just, like, not feeling it. It's not that I'm scared, it's not that I'm disturbed, I'm just like, I don't need to watch this right now.
One of the reasons why it's such a unique little... It's not a horror movie, I guess it's kind of a horror movie, but it's so much a summertime movie. It's the summer on a California beach boardwalk town, and it's you know, it feels very unique in that it's truly like it's on the beach. They're on motorcycles and leather jackets, and Kiefer Sutherland has a mullet and stuff, and it's just so strange and wonderful. And Corey Feldman is still young and watchable. I assume you have not seen much about the sequel to The Lost Boys that came out like 30 years later.
I had no idea that was a thing. Is Alex Winter well, I shouldn't ask who's involved, just in case. So I will not. Don't answer that question.
I won't. it's rough. And there's a third one that I've never seen that I don't know if I want to. But I can tell you that one very specific Goonie is in all three of them, and they do not get better, is what I'll say. So,
of course. I think part of the reason I've never seen that is, I am famously not a fan of the Goonies.
Famously a crazy person, yes.
Yeah. And I feel like part of my perception of that film is like it's the Goonies, but it's vampires, which I don't think is even accurate. Which
it's not. Corey Feldman and his brother that looks nothing like him run the comic book store. He's like wearing like a Rambo bandana. And he's like, if you want to learn how to live in this town, read this. And he like slips him a vampire comic, and he's like, we're vampire hunters.
Okay,
so insane.
Okay, I do need to see that.
It's so good, dude. I'm telling you. But I don't want to give too much more away about this masterpiece, just that I very much recommend it. But what do you have to save the rec center today?
Well, Seamus, I have recently been watching the Disney Plus documentary series Light and Magic, which is a story of the production effects house Industrial Light and Magic, which was founded for the original Star Wars and still exists to this very day. And it is just a wonderful glimpse into the mind of absolute crazy people that made all of your favorite things come to life in the 80s and 90s and 2000, everything since 1977.
That sounds genuinely delightful. I think that I would probably lose my mind watching some of how they did like the most iconic things in the entire world in my mind. I think that would be just amazing. You said it was a series or single documentary?
It's a short documentary series. And they have gotten everybody you could imagine to talk about ILM. It is crazy.
Oh my god. Well, I mean, it's everywhere. It's literally done all the most impressive things in Hollywood effects. So I can imagine they've got some really, really big names in there to talk about it.
Well, I won't go into it anymore other than say that it is well worth your time.
But with that, I think it's time to wrap up the show this week. If you want to reach us on social media, that's at @PCR_podcast on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. And you can reach us directly by emailing popculturereferencepod@gmail.com.
For next week's episode, we're going to be no time to talk about a movie like 3 weeks after it came out. We will be talking about Martin Scorsese's Killers of the Flower Moon. Very excited to get into that with you. I think it's actually a good thing that you got sick the second we saw that movie.
Yeah, literally the day after, maybe?
Yeah, I think it was literally the day after, and the fact that we've had some time to reflect, probably for the best, because there's a lot to process in that 3.5 hour tumult of a time.
Oh, there is so much that I have been, like, re-remembering, because it is truly a saga of a movie, and I cannot wait to get into it with you next week.
Alright, see you, everybody.
Adios, Spider-Man. Oh, it's the wrong Spider-Man. Oh, no. No.